Hello, this is Joel Lindstrom. If you're off work for the holidays, I hope you're enjoying them. And this week we're going to be rerunning some of our best episodes from the past year. Thank you so much for listening to CRM Audio and helping us grow. And we thought we would highlight some of our best episodes from the past year. This episode is one from way back in January, and this was before Scott LaFonte was an MVP. And it's episode 10 of At Your Service, What You Need to Know About Customer Service. And we're going to talk about, what's changed since this episode. Really, they don't talk a lot about technology in this episode. It's more about process and good customer service versus bad customer service. So this is really just as applicable as it was way back a year ago. What's changed since then with customer service is we have the preview release of AI for customer service and a lot of new functionality coming out. So there are a lot of changes in the core platform from a Dynamics perspective. But as far as the what's talked about with Scott and Shawn in this episode, it really is still applicable today. Enjoy.
Welcome to At Your Service, the service management podcast on the CRM Audio Network, with your hosts, Business Solutions MVPs, Sarah Jelinek, Scott LaFonte, and Shawn Tabor. Resco is a leading provider of mobile solutions for Dynamics 365. Resco Mobile CRM is an invaluable tool for the field service engineer working in field service for Dynamics 365. Other solutions from Resco include Route Planner, which combines geographic and calendar data, even taking into account variables such as traffic and weather, to ensure that your field agents plan the optimal route possible to their work sites. Resco also offers inspections, which allows you to create, assign, complete, and evaluate field inspections with ease. Inspections enables you to shape every step of your inspection process. For more information on these solutions, or to request a demo for any of their offerings, visit www.resco.net. We thank Resco for sponsoring this episode of At Your Service.
Okay, after many a try, we're back with another episode of the At Your Service podcast. I'm Shawn Tabor, and as always, I have my co-host, Scott LaFonte. How you doing, Scott?
I'm doing well, Shawn. What's this, take 3, 4?
I think 4. It's been something. So I got sick. Then we had technical difficulties. Then we had issues with Zencastr, and then we had scheduling issues. And now we're here.
Maybe we need to use universal scheduling.
Maybe.
Resource scheduling.
Maybe.
So.
But I think had we done that, our skills and characteristics would not have aligned, and we would not have been able to schedule. So it would have returned a query of 0 results. So, anywho's, that's some field service humor for you. Very little humor. But we got a good episode today. Last time we talked about our plans for the new year and what we wanted to do in terms of the pillars, and how we wanted to talk about and get more in depth on what it is you need to know when you're implementing customer service, field service, and project service automation. So today is going to be the kickoff to that process, and we're going to start with customer service. And this is not your typical At Your Service episode, I guess you could say, because we're gonna have a little bit more conversation in the background of why you make decisions on certain things, as opposed to more of a feature dive.
Yeah,
there'll be some feature dive, as we move forward in the conversation. In the coming month, but really what we want to do is we want to kick off this what you need to know, and you'll see on our blog we're going to update the blog with a couple of articles related to customer service, tie it together with what we're covering today.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, right? So if you look at it's like a implementation,
yeah,
right, of Dynamics, right? You start with a foundation. So the foundation for what you need to know is this is the background, right? And it's not so much the in-depth technical discussion.
Right, and we're going to cover for those in our audience who aren't really very familiar with the customer service aspects of Dynamics 365. We'll cover that, and we'll get into a little bit more depth in the overall solution and what it does. But then we're going to hit you with some thought-provoking questions and conversations. So I'm looking forward to that. We do have a bit of news. We're excited about an opportunity that we're embarking on with CRM UG. We'll be helping out with the customers. I'm sorry, not the customer service. We'll be helping out with the field service and project service automation SIGs for CRM UG starting this month, and I'm excited about that and what that means not only for the SIGs, but for upcoming events like Focus and Summit, as well as how we can help the CRM-UG SIG for PSA and field service through the podcast as well.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I know I am honored to be included in that, and as of last month, I would say probably even a little bit further back than that. I mean, project services really kicked into high gear. I'm being asked a lot of questions internally, externally. It's really kicking into, like I said, it's kicking into high gear. There's a lot more use cases. I think a lot of people are seeing the viability of the product in terms of what it can do outside of what people are thinking with a true professional services organization. So it's I think Microsoft has done a great job building out that product, and continue to do so. So I am really excited to be a part of this and drive it forward.
Yeah, and we'll have some more information on the next upcoming field service and project service automation SIG meeting. Should be in the next couple months. But we should have some more information on that in an episode or two. So keep your ears peeled for that, and as well keep an eye out on the blog for updates as well. So we're excited about that, and hope we can really bring a bit of at your service to the SIGs and help some folks in this CRM UG to get the most out of their field service and PSA implementations. So let's dig in. Let's talk about customer service.
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right. So with customer service, this has been around as part of the product since the beginning. Well, I shouldn't say the beginning. Since 3.0, for sure. Basically, customer service within Dynamics historically has been case management.
Yep.
Right.
And it's not just, to preface that too, it's not just Dynamics. So for our audience that doesn't know some of the other CRM tools out there, it's primarily, up until recently, been a lot of case management or incident management.
Right. Someone calls in or emails in a problem, and someone has to document that interaction via an incident or a case and track it to resolution. That's essentially, what to this point has meant customer service, and it's in its most vanilla state. That's it. Create a case, document actions against the case, make some notes, close a case or resolve a case.
Happy day.
Yep. Track resolutions, right? But now customer service is a lot more than just case management. There's a lot more possibilities and opportunities for input into your customer service organization. there's a lot more aspects to how you service your customer and what effective or good customer service means to you in your organization.
Yeah.
And just to give you an idea, within the customer service solution, and I just did air quotes, there's a number of major objects or entities within customer service that we need to just call out quickly. Things like dashboards to collect your important data in one place. Dashboards are in sales. Dashboards are in the service components.
They're everywhere now. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. Activities to keep track of tasks, email messages, appointments, phone calls, etc. Your standard account, your standard contact.
I do like social profile.
Yeah,
social profile is fantastic.
With the new level of or the burgeoning social ingestment of data that companies are doing now, looking at sentiment analysis and tracking whether or not folks need proactive touch. I mean, how many times have you went on Twitter to talk about a positive or negative, most times negative, customer service issue, and from that, you're contacted by the company? That's an example of how you can interact with customer service within Dynamics 365 through social profiles. The aforementioned cases to help you track and manage those customer requests, queues for routing of those cases based on product, based on resources, based on topic. It could be a number of things. We have products that you track against cases against that you're selling to your customers. What products are you selling to your customers? What products are your customers interacting with that they need to talk to you about?
Yep, and that's where the dashboards will come in handy as well. So keep in mind with a lot of these, especially with products, and if you're logging cases against those products, you can now report. You can report on those metrics. How many cases do I have against this product type, and see the trends.
Especially if you're in a manufacturing type of scenario, or if you're in a service-based scenario, those kind of trends or metrics to see what products am I getting the most hits against, whether they're complaints, issues, or opportunities, and then feed that information back into your product channel is very valuable.
Yep. Another big one that to mention before you go there is, we're seeing a lot more of not just your typical questions or troubles, but how about suggestions, enhancements? So we're starting to see a lot more of people branching out from their traditional case in terms of handling issues or questions, but more of, hey, it would be great if your product could do this, and then they can pass that off to their product management team for evaluation.
Right, exactly. And then you have for organizations that have special thresholds and standards for key accounts or key customers, you have enhanced SLAs. This gives you the ability within Dynamics 365 to understand how quickly you're supposed to respond to a client, how much time you're spending in each stage of that process. Important metrics and key KPIs to drive effective customer service. And then lastly, knowledge articles. These have really become a much more robust feature within Dynamics 365, especially since V9. And our ability to document images, links to YouTube videos, etc. They've become really a much more dynamic resource that you can share with your customers to address their questions, feedback, and otherwise resolve their issues.
Yeah, so, I would definitely say that's one of the areas that I've seen tremendous growth and improvement in terms of the robust capabilities and functionality, even going back to 2015, 2016. If you look at just the last couple of years, how it's grown, and they went first to the interactive service hub, and now taking it even a step beyond. It's just come a long way from the typical here's your subject and here's your content and keywords. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. And now that there's even more capabilities. So that was the core. Yep. But now you have even more capabilities that can enhance a customer service implementation with the Dynamics framework, such as.
I was going to say, should we enlighten our callers, our listeners? Excuse me, callers.
Yeah. So you have an enormous amount of options just in Azure alone, and all of the functions and frameworks that are available to you there. You have Power BI for a deeper level of reporting than we've ever have. Omni-channel communication with solutions such as CafeX for chat, for online interactions outside of just phone calls. You have self-service portals. You have voice of the customer, gamification, unified service desk, and then adding on to the customer service experience, obviously you have field service and project service automation. So a ton of different features and components that you can add in to really drive customer service for your organization. Now, we're not going to go into all of those today. We are going to drill into those as we move forward in the conversation about what you need to know about customer service. But today, what I really want to kind of focus on is a conversation on how you provide service to your clients. That's really where you got to start.
I mean, it's a great question, right? I mean, if you look at if you look at the journey of CRM, the big thing about CRM when it first came really big in the mid late 90s, right? Everything was Salesforce automation, SFA, sales. But now you have to focus on the customer, and you just can't stop at the sale. You have to focus on the servicing of your customer because there's just too many service providers out there. There's too many organizations selling like products, like services, and want to do it better, faster, and give you that level of service that we all want. I mean, even as consumers at home, right? If we have an internet issue, we want our issues resolved in a timely manner with our service provider. Otherwise, we're going to look elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree, and it's a lot more to it. In previous times, you would start service after the sale, right? Now, service happens from the second that someone reaches your website. It starts the second someone sees a tweet on Twitter. It starts the second that someone sees an ad in an app. All right, you're on the clock in terms of service. So, understanding those mechanisms where someone could potentially either have a question or a negative situation, or just a situation where you can convert a possible ambivalency to something positive, that's all customer service now. So it's not just the folks in the call centers waiting for the existing customer to call and have a problem with their product or service, right? It's a much more predictive model now, where you're looking for proactive touches, you're looking for ways to improve the channel to where a potential question about something they've seen on the website via chat. So, for example, I had a customer who had the ability for when they have someone on the website, they were using a marketing automation tool to understand when those folks were on the website, what pages they were looking at, what areas of interest did they have, how much time they're spending on each page, and then that information was fed to customer service so that a proactive touch can be sent out. You get them all the time when you go on the web to websites like Amazon, and you're shopping around, and you leave the page. They send you an email 15 minutes later that says, "Hey, here's some more things you might want to look at." Right?
Hey, did you forget something?
Right.
I mean, how often do you? I mean, I do it all the time. I web surf and I look and say, okay, I'll come back to it later. And all of a sudden, you get that email, or even if you're using the app, you get a little notification on your phone. Hey, you left something. Are you sure you didn't want to buy this?
Right.
So it really is turning that whole customer service piece into a selling opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And because every touch now, you have even less time of a consumer's attention span, right? Even less time to make that positive impression.
It's like, what'd you say, Shawn? I wasn't paying attention. No.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, we have customers, recently where you're looking at potential areas within the customer service experience or even the field service experience where those folks are becoming your frontline salespeople, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But it is in a service capacity. It's not the historical, what you would think of as sales. So it's difficult to really carve up Dynamics 365 anymore and say this is sales, this is service, because there's so many crossovers, and depending on how you define as a company what customer service means to you, those pieces and components, there's some lines that get blurred, right? And that's why
Definitely.
That's why they built the solution the way they have. So,
and to your point, Shawn, is yes, they've built the solution the way they have, and it makes it, I think, in my opinion, a lot easier to kind of cross those lines and say, hey, I'm more of now a proactive service sales organization, so to speak. In some cases, though, unless you've planned appropriately, and this is, I guess, what we'll get into over the coming months, is that unless you have a plan how to implement all this, you could have catastrophic results.
Absolutely. And that's really my whole point to starting here, is because you have to understand as an organization what effective customer service means to you. I'll give you a great example. A classic customer service experience call center implementation that I did, we had a customer who to this point leveraged the solution that they were replacing with Dynamics 365, and it was very heavily driven on reporting. So there was a lot of input manually by the customer service reps on statuses, sub-statuses, product types, product subtypes, all of this information and data that they had to capture in order to effectively manage the client experience, the customer service issue. So while I understood it at the time, because that's how they drove their KPIs, that's how they drove their product channel, it was very manually centered around the data they're collecting in there. So that to me is an area that you have to look at when creating a customer service solution, because it's not only how much data you gather about your client, but you want to be able to do this as effectively as possible and as fast as possible to the benefit of your customer service representatives as well, right?
Well, and that's what I was going to say, is a lot of times, right, probably folks that are listening to this call as well that have been on the implementation side, when they get the goals and objectives of what they're going to implement. Let's take for this example customer service. It's typically what we see a lot of times is the high level executive organizational goals and objectives. What we have to get down to is the folks that are doing the work. What are their goals and objectives? What are their pain points? How are we going to solve their problems and make life easier for them, faster for them, more effective, so that the goal is if I take a phone call from Shawn, my goal is to capture the details as accurately and quickly as possible, hopefully resolve it on that call, if not, do some follow-up, but then move on to the next thing. If you're spending 10, 15 minutes filling out information, or 5, 10 minutes, whatever it may be, how many other calls are piling up? How many other emails are piling up?
Right.
So those are the things that I think a lot of organizations take for granted, and even system implementers don't get to the heart of a lot of times. And a lot of times what I like to do is say, I want to spend time with your users. Mm-hmm. I want to understand what they do, and I want to hear directly from them in terms of what they would like to get out of a new implementation, a new piece of software, whatever it may be that we're implementing. I want to hear from them.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of experiences that you could take just from your own personal customer service experiences, calling into a company, dealing with an IVR, interactive voice response, and what information they cull out of that to streamline the time that you have with an actual live person, or even if you even need to go to a live person. Things like Internet of Things, gathering data from products that a customer maybe has with you, and having that registered through your company so that when they call in, the number is acknowledged, you know what unit they're calling about, and you can pull in data from that device. Things like that really provide great benefit to the customer calling in, because they don't feel that they have to do as much to get a higher level of service, which is important. Also, things like having the ability to get information from your customers through their interactions with your website, or having them with an IVR getting key information that then drives other data. Looking at things like similar cases, there's abilities through Azure that you can now, have suggested or similar records based on algorithms that Azure uses. So there's a lot of personal touches that you can make within your system to make it even better for your end customer as well as your employees. And that's an important step when looking at a customer service solution, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned, especially for the customer, right? Because I think at the end of the day, it is about the customer. Now, who is your customer? It could be your employees, it could be your end users that are purchasing your hardware, your software, whatever it may be. But that is another thing. The one thing I can't stand when I have to make a phone call to someplace about services, I have to go 3 or 4 or 5 levels deep on the IVR to finally get to where I think I'm supposed to go, and then I'm not even there, and then I try to hit 0 and it kicks me out. Mm-hmm. So that is, to me, an extremely frustrating point, because I don't have patience, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
for those users that are listening, I don't have patience for that.
And I can appreciate that too. I mean, well, and something else to think about: a customer service implementation. I have rarely had one where it's only supported by Dynamics 365.
That's a great point.
There are other integration points within that organization that drive data and key components of information to help that customer service experience through telephony, through an ERP system, through other back office systems. understanding those sweet spots for that integration and for where you're going to get the most data that's relevant to that person calling in, or that person on the comment board, or that person coming in through chat is critical. So that's something else to understand. You know, whether or not you have legacy systems. I always ask in every implementation, when I get a list of requirements, the first thing I always ask is, okay, these are great requirements. Thanks for documenting them. Is this how you do business, or is this how you've had to do your business because of solution X, Y, or Z? And that's an important piece as well. You know, looking at and having the ability and wherewithal to do that business process transformation, because, I mean, that's the key thing now is digital transformation, right? So
yes,
looking at these manual processes and transforming them into a lean business process that can be enabled through Dynamics 365 or other systems in combination to drive that effective customer experience for your customers. And, you know, another source to consider is marketing, because we've kind of touched on it throughout our conversation here.
But we haven't haven't formally announced it.
No. No, but you know what I mean? It's like every data point that you're collecting through this customer experience is a marketing possibility, right?
Definitely.
So I'll give you a great example of a positive customer experience, well, a negative customer experience that turned into a positive one for me. And this doesn't have anything to do with Dynamics, but it was a positive experience. So in the end. So I had a negative customer experience at Walmart. This was years ago, but my wife went and purchased something. We had a negative experience about it, and I was not happy at all. So I went out on Twitter and I tweeted about it. Now, I don't have thousands and thousands of followers, but you know, my 1,000 followers or so. You know, and if you're interested in following me, it's at CRM Hobbit. Just throwing that out there.
It's a nice plug-in. I like that.
Thank you very much. But you know, within honestly 5 minutes, I had a reply from Walmart customer service on Twitter, and then they asked for me to send them a DM, and then we had a very quick direct message conversation, 3 or 4 messages. And then within about an hour, tops, I had a path to resolution that ended up being very successful, and everybody was happy. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of this is not a scenario any longer for most organizations where you're just sitting there waiting for someone to call you, right?
Right.
There are other methods now, especially with millennials. There are other methods in which you can have that sentiment and need to jump on something to avoid a negative connotation to your product or service. And these are things that you have to look at from your organization perspective. You may not be ready for that, quite honestly. You may be a smaller organization and may not be looking to do social engagement. You may not be looking to manage sentiment, but it's a great example of how a very quick 140 to 280 characters can turn something very, very good potentially to something very, very bad, or vice versa.
Yeah. Well, you know me, right before the holidays, I mean, how many issues did, and I'm sure many of you as well, had issues with packages being delivered or not being delivered. I ordered the iPhone X, and it got lost. All right, so what do? Contact, on social media, and sure enough, it was they were eventually found. Mm-hmm. And so those are the types of things, because we all don't have time for phone calls, and we're still relying on those organizations that we purchase products or services from to be able to support us in the various capacities. And I think it's also helpful, right? So a lot of times consumers they get frustrated. We're stressed. We're all short on, I guess, our private time, our personal time, and we value that. And so, unfortunately, sometimes we all get a little stressed out. It's how I think customer service then is handles those situations. So some of that comes into, yes, we have the software, we have the technology, but we also, during these conversations, need to talk about the training and communication plans and things like that with our associates so that we know what's coming and maybe even a process improvement or interaction improvements with our end consumers.
Right. And with those marketing data points, that then can turn around into opportunities for the sales teams, which then turns into sales, which then turns into additional customer service experiences. So it's much more of a kind of an infinite loop than it is a circle, right? It's not necessarily starting at a sale and then ending at a closed case. It's a perpetual loop now, and it's ongoing, and it's evergreen. So having the ability to think of your business processes and where you want to go with your sales team and where you want to go with your product development, having that kind of insight and planning is key for a successful customer service implementation, in my opinion.
I would agree. I would definitely agree with that.
Something else to really consider when mapping out how you're going to manage your customer service engagement is, where are those resources? Where are your call centers? Where are your customer service reps? So if you have a global customer service footprint, that can have a big impact on how you develop and manage this implementation. Distributed customer service teams can be the subject of international laws. They can have regulations that they need to follow up on or adhere to from country to country. You could also, based on that different geographic footprint, you may very well leverage different technologies for different solutions based on that region.
Yeah, look at chat.
Exactly. Right? That's where I was
Chat's
going.
a big one.
Exactly. You could have something like Cafe X in North America, and you could very easily have something like WeChat in China, right? So having that kind of knowledge of those differences and how you want to manage that and how you want to deploy and roll that functionality and capability out, how you want to track that information in interactions, and then taking all of these inputs and helping you model a more appropriate customer profile. Because, for example, if you keep getting requests from a client on chat constantly, that's probably a good indication that that's their preferred method of the communication. Or if you seem to get a lot of information from them from Twitter, you might want to document their Twitter handle so you can monitor their sentiment, especially if they're a big client, right?
Absolutely. And I think on the converse side, if they say, don't contact me these certain ways, depending on where that customer is located, what country, you need to take that very seriously.
Absolutely.
And update those. So for Canada's got castle regulations. I know the European Union, all those different countries there have all different sorts of rules and regulations around marketing and communication with consumers, especially when they say they opt out.
Right.
And they can have significant financial impact to your organization. So that's and the other thing to consider is, your users in those various regions may be aware of it. But what if you have followed the sun and you have, it's US based time now, and you have a customer calling from over in Europe, or you need to call them or contact them because you're on US time. Are you aware of all of that?
Right.
So it's not just being aware of the rules and regulations in your own backyard. It's you need to know everywhere.
Right. And if there is a chain to, not necessarily a chain of custody, but a chain of customer service folks that you need to involve in a certain scenario, that's another example of when you'd want to make sure that you're on top of geographic locations.
Yeah. Escalations or routing, especially if it's after hours and it's a high priority item. How do you handle moving that over to the next call center that's coming on shift? Those are some big things, especially, maybe not so much at the end, at the consumer state such as us, but with large organizations that are handling critical hardware or software components. That's a big deal.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've covered a lot of different information in the last 35 minutes or so. A lot of different questions, conversations that you need to have in when you're framing up your customer service implementation. And I think it's given a lot of good food for thought. If there's anything that you've heard in this last 35 minutes or so that's rung true, send us a note, voice@crm.audio, and let us know about your experience so that we can share that and maybe glean some ways on how you've managed these issues and opportunities in your customer service implementations in the past. We're going to keep moving on this topic, like we said in the next few episodes. In our next episode, we'll go into a little bit more feature dive and talk about some of the top features in customer service implementations and how we've managed through some pitfalls, some opportunities, and done some creative things in how we've managed that customer service experience to great results. So we'll do that in the next episode.
I look forward to talking about Voice of the Customer. That's one of my new favorites.
Yeah, and I think for Voice of the Customer, I think we're going to bring in Mr. Lindstrom to as a guest to talk about that. He does some really cool stuff with Voice of the Customer right now.
And of course, Cafe X. I mean, both of those, I think, to me, in terms of if you look at the overall technology, and I know we'll get to it, but those are the two areas that kind of get me all excited and jazzed up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to also dig into a little bit of the bot framework and really understand some of the capabilities and opportunities that are out there with the bot framework and what you can do with it. And so we'll be drilling in deeper into some of those features as we explore a little more in our customer service adventure. I hope this was some helpful information, at least food for thought for you when talking about customer service, that it's not just call centers anymore. And there's a lot of different ways that you can create a really positive customer experience. Okay, so, Scott, I'm looking at the clock. We've been talking a little while, and this has been good, but I just realized, you know what time it is?
I think so. I think it is Diva time.
I am fabulous as always, Sean.
Professor Diva. Ooh.
We made it as easy as possible.
And once again, we are back with Diva Time with the Dynamics 365 Diva, Sarah Jelinek. How you doing, Sarah?
I am fabulous as always, Sean. How about you?
I'm doing all right. And, Scott enjoyed our last episode when we talked about Unified Service Desk, when we both were essentially taken to school on what USD can do, which I appreciated.
Class was in session.
It certainly was, Professor Diva. And so he's joined us again. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Sean. Hey, Sarah. How are you?
Doing great. Glad to hear you.
Okay. So, Sarah, what's on the agenda today? What are we talking about today?
So today I want to talk about a use case for editable grids in our customer service area in Dynamics 365.
Okay.
Recently,
I've used editable grids before with cases. So what's new on this angle?
Yeah. So I had an interesting situation. One of my customers was looking to utilize an editable grid to quickly update their cases. So imagine that you're a team lead and you've got the service request or cases open in a view for all the members of your team. Maybe you're having a quick huddle and you're all talking about, okay, these open cases that are there, what's the status, what notes do we want to put in there? And the manager, the team lead, wants to be able to quickly add a note or update just based on the conversation that they've had with their employees. Or maybe they perhaps just want to look at the most recent piece of information that had been included as part of that case and want to be able to just quickly talk about that without having to open up every single record. So if you're meeting with a team of 8 people or 7 people or even 2, it can be pretty tedious clicking on a record to open it, look at the information, close it, go to the next one. We have some nice handy navigation features in Dynamics 365 that let us do that, but they wanted to basically work with these records like you're in an Excel workbook or worksheet. Well, one of the options we proposed was utilizing Excel Online. You can basically export that view to Excel Online, update information if you want to, save your changes, which kind of re-imports those records, and that's good. But the thing that they really wanted to be able to see was that last note that they typed in. So this week I typed in a note about a case, and maybe the next week if it's still open, I want to look at that and see what was the last note that we typed in there. So we utilize editable grids for this. And to kind of give you an overview, we'll see a little bit more detail of how this process occurred within the blog article that we'll write kind of detailing this, but just a high level overview. We basically utilized 2 new multiple line of text fields. So think about it. We've got one we call maybe update. And then we have one called last note. And what we did is on our editable grid, we included these 2 new fields. And as the team lead would go through and type information into this update field to say, talked to the customer or talked to the CSR, here's the update, type their information in there, and then on to the next record. Well, we know with editable grids that as soon as we move to the next record, Dynamics 365 will automatically save that information for us. So we just simply utilized a workflow that ran in the background that said, when that field gets updated, let's take that information and automatically just throw that into the last note field so that we're automating that process for them. And then just go ahead and clear that update field because we want to let them to be able to type in new information in there. Provided the end user a nice view to see that, hey, that field had been populated, cleared out, and then our last note field got updated for us. Now, that's just simply working with 2 fields. But what we also did is this customer utilized notes a lot, the note entity, on their customer service cases. So we also had that workflow go out and create that note record for us. Now, we could also create an activity, custom activity if we wanted to, go create another entity related to that case if we want, all sorts of capabilities that we could achieve with that. So we created a synchronous workflow, had them type in their information, it updated it, and it was just like they were doing it in Excel and it was real time. So if something got where they were interrupted, maybe they only got through a third of the cases, you're not going to have to worry about trying to save it in Excel and re-import it or having to open up every one of those records. So just a thought of maybe something you want to look at if you want to just quickly update records. Now, we did this for cases, but you can do this for opportunities, do this for your leads, do this for any situation where you just want to quickly update a bunch of records.
I can see a lot of applications for that. That's really cool. And did your users use this on the mobile device as well, or was that not a part of your scenario?
Oh, absolutely. We just simply added these 2 fields to a view, and because it is a sync, we actually created a synchronous workflow, ran in the background. They can do this on their mobile device when they're looking at working with records there. They can just simply do this within the web client if they're presenting their screen to a bunch of the other users.
Very cool. And I imagine the adoption of this was pretty significant.
Yes. We all know, for example, if we look particularly at sales, a lot of times people would maintain their leads or their opportunities right within Excel. This gave them that same experience to quickly go update information. So when management was looking at it, a salesperson can go in and update probability, or they could type in a note, whatever they wanted to. And then anytime management wanted to run reports, they had fairly recent, accurate information because we made it as easy as possible for that team to put their information in.
Isn't that quite typical that you get a requirement in the vein of, like in Excel?
All the time, yes.
It is crazy how if you think about a spreadsheet application, the way that's been embraced, and even in the business applications that we have now, we're consistently trying to emulate that capability and functionality within Dynamics, even though we have the real functionality embedded in it. It's hilarious.
Well, and it wouldn't surprise me if we eventually get there. I mean, if you look at even project service automation and having that linked, so maybe that's the way it's heading. Who knows?
But that sounds like an amazing piece of functionality. Are you implementing that consistently in multiple clients, or was that just a one-off for that particular client?
This one was kind of a one-off, but I see it as, it's, for me, it's one of those things that once I figure out an answer to a problem, it tends to be the answer for all the next few problems that come along.
Right.
So I can definitely foresee it being that situation. And I think with editable grids too, the capability that we have to do grouping. So if we wanted to group it by the owner, the team member, being able to organize it that way, that maybe if I'm not meeting with an entire team and I just want to look for a particular representative, I could create an advanced find, I could do filtering, but it's just a really nice way to keep everything organized. So maybe let's talk about our high priority cases first. Let's talk about our normal and our low. Editable grids just give us a lot of great functionality with that.
Absolutely. Very cool. Well, how would people learn more about how to do this if they wanted to do this for their own implementation?
Well, look forward to a blog article at Your Service, our blog site, where we'll be able to provide a little bit more details, maybe some screenshots. And heck, if I feel up to it, maybe we'll put a video out there to show you how that works in real time.
Ooh,
I know
that's big doings coming from the diva, and I look forward to that because I actually want to try to build that.
It's very easy
I'm a little bit excited
once you see it the first time.
I tell you what, every diva time, it's like going to school. But in a good way, not a bad school.
I'm not.
Like, oh God, I got to go to school.
I'm not the school marm that's going to take the ruler to your knuckles. It's going to be.
No.
Here's this wonderful piece of knowledge that I've experienced in my real life experience with Dynamics 365. Embrace and learn and share.
Well, exactly. Well, Sarah, it's always good to get the knowledge and the insight from the diva, and I look forward to our next opportunity.
Absolutely.
All right. It's been Diva time.
On behalf of myself, Sean Tabor, my co-host Scott LaFonte, and the Dynamics 365 diva, Sarah Jelinek, we thank you for listening and subscribing to the podcast. You can reach us at voice@crm.audio. On Twitter, you can follow us, CRM Hobbit for me, for Scott, at FLD Service _Guru, and of course, at Dyne365 Diva for Sarah. For more information and content about what we spoke about on this episode and others, visit our blog at atyourservicepod.com. This has been At Your Service on the CRM Audio Network, a production of Dynamic Podcasts, LLC.